All right, we adjourned our regular county court session and now we're convening our work session. Top agenda topic items are economic development, county administrator, and county administrator, those two topics. Economic development. I mean, I've kind of put forth my proposals for economic development in retaining another professional economic development contractor. And then we can develop the scope of work to that, if that's what we were to decide to do. One, things like grant writing and managing our enterprise zone and other things like that, plus recruitment, just in general recruitment of business and industry. My feeling on it is if we're gonna do that, we need somebody, and I'm sorry, but not from Harney County. I'm looking and thinking about somebody that's maybe over on the west side of the state that has a better finger on the pulse of what's going on over there where all the industry and business is at. And, trying to recruit and bring something from there to here. I think somebody here in Harney County that doesn't have a connection to that, we're not gonna really see much results that way. That's my feelings. However, whatever we decide to do, if it's that or whatever, then we as a body need to decide, lock it down, and then move forward with whatever we're deciding we're gonna do.
I think Biz Harney is planning on presenting to the court in the near future. They had even talked about trying to get it done by today, but they obviously didn't, to give us a little bit more information on what services are already being provided locally. Because I know for me at that last economic development work session, I was surprised to learn of the services that are being provided. But I think it's got to be taken with a grain of salt, because I think that there are some organizations involved with our county that, given their name and their job description, there is a service that should be provided, but I'd like to see some statistical data that shows what benefit that's had. And until I have a better grasp on what is already available locally, it's hard for me to think about a direction to take. I understand the judge's point about wanting the best expertise, and it may not come from the county, but I also feel pretty strongly that if we can have someone with a local vested interest, depending on what we need them to do. In some cases, it may not be appropriate, but if it is appropriate, I would prefer local, always.
If we end up funding a position, I just want the best person, and they may be a local person who's, had lots of experience and has lots of connections and is very extroverted and very, energetic, or it might be someone from out of area. I don't care. I understand the thinking, and I think I'm glad you said that, because there's a lot of people say it's got to be somebody here who needs a job, that knows Harney County. Once we have our concept and our scope of work, then we recruit for that. One thing, a thought I've had is, if we do have an economic development coordinator, manager, director, whatever you want to call them, I'd like us to be very involved on a regular basis with them, so that on the grant side of things, I kind of like it where they come in the report, okay, grants. I haven't heard anything from you guys or from the cities that they need a grant for this, that. So right now we're managing this one, or the Fair Event Center Phase 2, or whatever, whatever they're involved in. That's one piece of the agenda. Then they talk about the recruitment efforts, and that it's not just the same thing every month. They're really, really trying. They're really, really doing it. I don't know, because I haven't seen the right model that's really worked really well yet. So it's hard to know. But that's just my thought, is sometimes I think that we shouldn't feel we must hire local, but I don't want to exclude that at all either.
Well, I mean, if that right, I'm not gonna exclude just because somebody is local, if that right unicorn that had the right connections and experience popped up local, then that would be a different story. I get, place that caveat in there. But I think it also depends on what's our focus gonna be? Is our focus for economic development gonna be small business and Main Street? Or is it gonna be big business industry? And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about, a 500 a job employer or 1,000, or big major warehouses or whatever. But we need some kind of diversity in our economy here in manufacturing and industry of some kind. So if that's our focus, then that's what we focus on. And a lot of those other services that are being fulfilled by Biz Harney and GEODC and small business development and those other entities, let them deal with the small business, and whatnot. So I think that's where we really need to come up with what direction we want to go in.
I don't. oh,
Because I think like for strategy and economic development employee coordinator, who is very responsive. And then we have a piece, one of our strategies for the county, of course, is going to be to increase our revenues, right? And so there's some things as elected officials that is kind of our boilerplate to try to make happen, whether it's trying to work on Pilton SRS and changing that formula, whether it's trying to find some other path for the county government to go ahead and open some doors along increasing revenues. We're still doing the strategic planning for the county, right? That's still going on. And so I hope we can zone into that. But yeah, I think in the past, the county court's always busy with so much stuff and the economic development. The last couple that I'm aware of, maybe we didn't make them here in this room with us enough. Maybe that's, maybe they'd be a standing agenda item almost once a month at least, kind of thing. Who knows? I think we'll find our path, but if the scope of work, if we can get working on that right away, then we can figure out what that's gonna look like in terms of.
Well, again, I think to define that scope of work, we have to define a direction of where we want to go, whether it's recruitment or if it's local development.
And those, I will have some input for you from these meetings I'm having, just to hear some other voices that come from some of these sectors, and what their views are to share with you. And as we move forward, what is your timing you're hoping for?
Oh, I really think, I don't want to push it so fast that we miss anything, but I really think, by the end of the year, I'd like to have something ironed out on what we're gonna do with an economic development plan by the end of the year. I don't know, I just asked the treasurer on those funds that we get annually, about $105,000 a year. And currently, right now, we pay, our internet person out of that and, a couple other small things. And then the economic development contract was getting taken out of that. And we have to, at the end of each year, give a report on what we spent it for. So my question to her was, and I'm gonna have to make a phone call, she wasn't sure. Do we have to expend that full 105,000 every year, or are we allowed to carry any of it over? If we have to expend it every year, then we may have, minus what we've taken out of it so far this year, there's probably about $85,000 left that we will have to find something to do with before the year's out, if that's the case.
We'll have something.
Well, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And then once we decide if we're gonna contract with somebody or employ somebody or however that's gonna look, then we'll have those funds.
So we're not on contract with the state for those funds. We just get them automatically, or?
Yeah, they're just economic development funds. I don't know the exact origin from them as to why they're lottery funds, but I don't know if it was legislative that said each county will get this percentage amount or what. I don't know the history on it.
I don't feel comfortable articulating what the needs of our county are in terms of economic development right now. But I feel like the insight from the meetings that you're proposing will shed a lot of light on that. And while I don't want to kick the can down the road any further, I think it's important enough to get it right. And so I like your idea of let's try to have a goal of by the end of the year. And I think that there's going to be more information that comes to light about what services are already provided. So for me, the wheels are already in motion for the things that we need. And that's good enough for me right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see that other than listening to what our community needs and listening and doing more research on what's being provided already. I really don't want to duplicate. Everything we duplicate is just money that we could be spending on something that's not here already. That's not being done.
Where do you see the county strategic plan timeline ending up, and what is the outcome supposed to be for that? Because what the outcome will be for these 4 meetings I'm gonna hold is information gathering that I will then share, and it will be done. And the 4th one is on December 2nd. That's the last one.
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought up the strategic plan. I cannot remember exactly what they said the timeline was. I know they talked about having 4 meetings potentially and being able to give us a finished product after that. I just reached out to them again recently because they asked for a list of our departments and how many people were in each department. And I think I got that to them 3 weeks ago and haven't heard anything back. So I followed up with them in the last couple of days and waiting to hear back about what is the timeline and what are our next steps. So I don't know if by the end of December, if we will have a finished plan, but I am real optimistic that we will at least have had one more meeting and start to identify some of the areas of focus, which may be enough to at least take the information that you get, look at where we think our strategic plan is heading, and make an informed decision.
Judge Hart, do you have examples of job descriptions for other county economic development directors or coordinators already? Do you have some of that?
I
or not?
don't.
Okay.
I have a couple of.
All right.
I asked Biz Oregon for some RFP examples of
Yeah,
what we would
right.
use as a sample to go out with if we chose to go that route. But I don't have any job descriptions or anything that's done in-house or along those lines.
I mean, I remember when in 2017, that's the last time the county wrote one, as far as I know. And I don't know if it was any good. I think I ended up writing because nobody ever had time or did anything. And I just said, we gotta do something here. It's easier to react to something someone's put down on paper for you than just to start with that blank sheet, and so I'm sure it was tweaked.
Yeah.
Amongst the county
Well,
clerk, but
And I asked for those too, for just that reason that it was a starting point. It would serve as a starting point. Once we defined what our goals are, then that RFP would serve as a starting point if we go that route.
I actually don't really know what too many of the counties are Eastern Oregon type counties do spend their money.
Well,
I haven't asked them.
And those are questions that with the AOC net conference coming up and the administrators portion of it that I attend, which last year most of my time was spent in the administrators sessions versus the other sessions. And I think I got more out of those and building those relationships with those other administrators. So those are questions that I can put out there this year, but it's gonna be 2-3 weeks yet before we get there, 3-4 weeks yet.
Commissioner Dorr, did you have a timeline in mind for when you'd like to have those meetings completed by?
December 2nd, there was the last one.
Oh, that's the last one.
Yes, the
Sorry,
last
got it
one.
planned
I'm
out.
already got them planned. I just gotta finish
Did you already
sending
say-
out invites.
Did you already say that and I missed it?
No, not really. I mean, I said December 2nd, but I
Okay.
did not necessarily explain things clearly.
It's on the
That's
books.
one of my tools. Explain it clearly, don't explain it clearly. Yeah, also when I send out, it'll have all the dates, but they're from 3 to 5 PM. From 3 to 5 PM, end of the day. And, again, it's not like it's anything amazing, but it's different than a regular meeting. It's different than a county court. It's different than if it goes the way the last one did years ago, because people start out and they said, because there's always, you get people in the room and there's always some that just love, they have a lot to say and they want to say it and it goes on and on. And I was just really careful to say, I'm gonna keep you on track, don't be offended if I say, okay, we're gonna move on. Because in 2 hours, there's a whole bunch of stuff I want to pick your brain on, each other, and then it just, then they wanted to know at the end how it all sounded. So I think I've got to find the one I wrote back then, because that'll help remind me how it went, but it wasn't anything special except that it had a different mix of people than we usually have at the meetings for each topic, and it made the difference. And they weren't there to argue their point of view. Another, they helped inform, particularly back then, the electric co-ops, for instance, OTEC was there and Hardy Electric was there. Of course, now we've got the irrigation curtailment coming. I mean, a lot has changed. Significant things have changed in the last 8-9 years, and we're gonna get up to speed. And then housing, we've got a different scenario evolving with the housing right now than we did then. It'll get us all up to speed again, and whatever way we go ahead and work our economic development efforts, will be some information for them to start off with.
Just in those for numbers, the Telos development, Palmer Estates, is initially looking at 170 units. And that'll be over time. It's not gonna be build 170 houses in 1 year and flood the market and everything else, but that's their 8-year, actually over an 8-year period, that's what they're looking at, is 170 units. Miller Springs, I think, is somewhere around the same neighborhood, 150 or so.
And see, that would be a really game changer. We need to have employment. We need to have employment to make that. If those two things happen, housing as well as more employers, that would really help get things going.
Snowball effect off of that I was thinking of myself the other day is you're gonna get, actually, they've started broke ground on 3 houses in Miller Springs already. 2 of those are already sold. So we're gonna get people who can relocate, tired of maybe Bend or Portland or whatever. They're gonna wanna relocate, make it work from home type of jobs. We're gonna get, initially, we're gonna get, some retirees that again can sell their homes for $500,000 and have a $300,000 home built, pay cash for it. Initially, that's what we're gonna see off of that. But in order to get those houses done, we're gonna need people in trades. Things have slowed down over on the west side of the state for construction and building. And we might end up with carpenters and electricians and plumbers that decide to move to Harney County, because that's where the jobs are at currently in the process of building these homes. But they buy a home and end up sticking around. So we could see that, and all the residual off of that, a restaurant, another grocery store again, maybe, and another pharmacy, hopefully, if we get retirees in here. Those kind of things. So even with this beginning start of the home development potential, we could see snowball effects in our, well, maybe not snowball, but we could see effects of growth within our economy just off of the construction itself.
In fact, it was after the sessions that I'm about to reconvene on everything, that then what used to be a monthly meeting called the CRT, that a lot of community members and business owners would come to once a month, that the economic development director usually convened. Those had been lacked really strong purpose at that point. I mean, people got together and shared information, and from those sessions came housing, this, that, and the other. And the housing subcommittee, a group was helped work on that. And I remember getting a grant for the development of the Harney County Housing Roadmap, which was a 2019 document. And what that said was Harney County has, for the employment and whatever that we had, it sounds humble, but it said you need about 25 new homes, 3-bedroom, 2-bath kind of homes in a certain price range to add to your housing inventory. You've got a lot of old housing, a lot of small, older housing. And when you're trying to recruit some of your positions where the people want a decent to upper level kind of house, you don't have those. And sometimes you don't get the people you need here, as well as people who've lived here all their life, or they're going through their different ages. You start with a really small home and you have a family, so it's a little bigger. And then eventually your children are gone and now it's just the two of you and then you just want something, less, you didn't have that mobility among the housing in your own community because there was no
We didn't
rent.
have the inventory
There were
options.
rentals, there weren't, it was such a tight housing market. It was a problem. Not only for quality of life, but also for helping get more employment. So to think that the Miller Springs is gonna already start doing this is, of course, more has changed since that 2019 timeframe, but finally, we're starting to get some of the housing. Let's see how it rolls. What Judge Hart just said is probably true, and then some local people have been just waiting to
Oh, okay.
change the situation.
I wouldn't write it in stone, but the preliminary, whatever you wanna call it, is they're looking at building 40 units next year.
And so this is the good time for us to get all of our economic development ideas and assistance going.
Do you have 3R, whatever they're called, that's working with the cities on your radar for invites
No,
and
just
just listening
workshops.
sessions?
I don't really know who they are, except Nick Green. I mean, is he still involved? No. No, I don't know where does he live?
I don't know where he lives. I just know
John
that
Day, Grant County.
in the last public comment to the Water Resource Commission, when our petition panelists made a
Yeah,
proposal, he was on there, and I felt like most of what he spoke about had to do with economic development plans of the cities, and so.
The cities will definitely come into the table for this. Also on infrastructure, their public works directors and gonna invite Eric Trishella, and just folks like that. And what I'm saying is, you don't have to prepare at all, just come. And when we're talking and facilitating, you say what you think and say what you know and learn from each other. And then we're not coming out there with a product that night. It'll get ideas going. People have good ideas and maybe the time for the idea wasn't 9 years ago and maybe now is the time for some of those to come to the fore.
So economic development is moving on. We're still gathering, that sounds like really, we're still gathering information and formulating a strategy or an idea of which
Oh,
direction to
I know what
go
I'm
to.
gonna do. I'm also gonna, with Holly's help, I haven't talked to her about this yet, create a survey or a way for the public that doesn't come to these meetings to be able to provide input as well, their own ideas, whatever, and they can do it hard copy or they can do it in however Holly can help you make it smart. So it's not to be exclusive to have these targeted conversations, but it's helpful sometimes to just have it that way, so.
Any other discussion on economic development?
Yes, you say we pay our county website out of our economic development fund. Where else can we pay for that? Because
Well-
eventually, I'd like to see it just be part of our administration costs.
Next year, I had planned on, and I'm looking at this, I've been looking for the last couple of years at ways that departments that, like we just spoke about this morning, building department and environmental services and public health, rural health clinic. Departments that have elements on our website that are utilizing that for outreach. And those are departments that have their own funds, should help contribute towards the cost of that website management. I still, from looking at other options with other entities, I still think we're paying too much. $10,000 a year is too much for what we're paying for our website. There's at least a half a dozen options that we could probably come up with and get for $5,000 a year. There is going to be some work that's gonna have to be done by department heads to look at their portions of the website and make sure that it's up to date. And if things need to be updated, they might have to go in and update it. But the agencies and the entities that we have the options of looking at have people and support to help do that. They're not gonna do it themselves for us, but they'll help us do it. And there are municipalities and counties all across the state that use these same web managers or, whatever they call them. Providers. So just gonna say, I think we're overspending on our website.
Just want to say that. I mean, it's a legitimate cost, however much we pay, and I would just like to, even though it certainly does have an economic development piece to it, it also just has regular governance, public
Well,
piece to it.
if there's a portion of it that's being used for outreach from public health, in a roundabout way, you could circle that back around to economic development, but really it's a separate purpose. Building and environmental services, yeah, there's economic development there. But again, they're a fund that is generating their own monies. Get the pressure off of these other funds and have those funds, those departments contribute towards the paying of them. Again, anything else on economic development? I wanna say, because it's revenue to the county. The other day I got to thinking, and I don't remember if it was during county college or where it was, but PILT, and you mentioned PILT just a second ago. PILT is, the formula for PILT is that it's based on total acreage and population of your county. And they come up with a basic number of PILT that you're gonna get. And I'm just gonna use some round numbers here. So say Harney County, that our total PILT payment would be $3 million. And then from that, they deduct any other federal payments from programs from the previous year. Tailored grazing, SRS, refuge funds, all that then gets deducted from your total PILT. So if you have $3 million of PILT, and then we normally got a little over $1 million, $1,040,000, I think it was the last time we got one, that comes off. So now you're down to $2 million on PILT. And then you're gonna deduct your tailored grazing and just say there's $100,000 there and your refuge is a couple $100,000. So I'm a little high on my estimate, but I'm just using this as round numbers. So now you're down to $1,700,000. Our PILT payment last year was 1.4, so I'm a little high, but regardless, just to demonstrate what's going on there. We didn't get SRS funds last year, so this year's PILT payment should be 1 million. We did get timber receipts, I think, of about 45,000. So this year's PILT payment should be $1 million more than what we received last year.
There was a year in the past, I think before I was on the court, where one of those payments was skipped, and maybe it was SRS. We didn't get paid
Just
one year.
recently, or?
No, some years back, and I hope that's how it worked, but I wasn't on the court and I don't.
So I put in a call once I remembered that and remembered that, and we haven't gotten our SRS because it hasn't been reauthorized. And I got to thinking, I was like, we should be entitled to more PILT this next year. So I made a call to AOC because they normally coordinate and work that at the national level. And honestly, they were like, that's a good question. So there might be a lot of other counties that.
I hope so. I hope you're
So
right.
I will let you know how that goes. Hopefully, the only difference is gonna be is that in SRS funds, those funds were dedicated to roads and schools. Whereas if we get an extra $1 million in PILT, it's gonna be general services, which we could turn around and then transfer $1 million over to roads. But the uses are not gonna be this. I mean, the general services is gonna be everything, whereas SRS was dedicated to roads and schools.
I'm surprised none of us have thought of this until you just mentioned it. Good.
So
I hope you're right.
putting the bug out there, and hopefully that it won't get overlooked that way. And then we potentially have the potential for making up for that lost SRS funds. So I just wanted to throw that in there when we're talking about revenues and monies and generating taxes and whatnot. Next topic, county administrator. Whatever, we've kind of hashed this out. Don't know exactly what direction again that the court wants to go with or to work towards. It's a matter of coming up with money, even if we have a county administrator that's going to, part of their requirement in their job description or expectation is gonna be to find 1 or 2 grants a year, or whatever, that's not gonna fund the position. You know, administrative costs off of a $1 million grant is $100,000 that then has gotta be split between, between all of our needs in the general fund for administration. It would help, but the first year, we're definitely gonna have to have money the first year to be able to fund it in its entirety throughout the year, the first year. Anything they generate, any revenue they generate through administrative costs and grants will go towards the next year's funding of that position, but the initial first year, we're gonna have to have the full amount available.
Did you guys have a chance to look at that proposal or brainstorming starter that I sent out before our last meeting? Cause I thought we were gonna have a work session on this.
I didn't,
Emailed it to Holly, but I CC'd you guys.
do you remember approximate date? You might have sent it
I
out,
didn't see it either.
or what was the
day
subject?
before, it had an attachment that said county administrator. It was probably the day before our last meeting, which was on the first.
Thank you.
Well,
Oh, thank you.
just yes. Response.
Apologize, I hadn't seen this.
That's all right.
Prepared with it.
In the way you wrote this, I'm not sure. So you're saying the position of county administrator or chief of staff that would take on a lot of stuff the judge does, as well as utilizing the position. Are you saying having?
That's not very well written at all. Because I was thinking,
I
if
just
you
wanna
had an
make sure I understand.
administrator taking up a lot of the administrative duties, then that would leave the executive administrator to help with other things because they wouldn't have as many of those duties. That's poorly worded.
Now,
But it
so
sounds,
like a chief of staff, you know, they kind of run the staff, so to speak. I mean, the staff does, the department heads, you know, run their staff, but any of the administrative compensation, payroll, HR related stuff that needs discussed, that isn't just an automatic communication between department head and HR, they're the ones. Policies that aren't done, they get them created and approved by us, so that most of the time, everybody knows the rules of them and it flows, but you still need someone who's always there. You know, they would be part of a department head meeting, or they would perhaps convene department head meetings, I don't know. But I've always been concerned about just having one individual doing payroll. You know, just because of, you know,
well, and that's,
and so I was thinking, I think there would be a new position involved in a change of positions. Because we're not really ready, nor can we afford a super huge permanent administrator role yet, but we may evolve to it, you know, but we need to start out with moving some of the admin out of the county judge position to a really objective, non-elected position.
it's problematic. Not only do we need help with the clerk's office and HR and payroll, but each of those, well, especially HR and payroll, there's one person that knows what's going on. So if they get hit by a log truck or get the flu for 3 months, they're the only person that knows what's going on. If we could free up some of those administrative duties that the executive administrator does now, I think that position could also help with some of these things so that we'd have some redundancy, not only some help for them, but another person that knows what's going on with those.
when we had an administrative assistant position for the county court, it was different than what we have now as an executive assistant. Yes, they still do a lot of things like the scheduling and minutes and on that type of stuff. But, in this case, our executive assistant has taken on things, taken on projects such as, worked with me very much on the broadband stuff, worked on the
Landfills,
landfills.
recycling.
Exactly. And it's not like we're trying to not do this stuff. It's that, there's so much work. And then they can take something that's really a county thing that is, and run it all by us, of course, but they can get some stuff, help us get farther down the road on stuff.
Well, and that's where the idea of chief of staff really resonated, and that was brought up by Caitlin Lovell, the Department of State Lands Director.
I used that in a past county court member. It's a military term, but it means something.
Yeah.
So one of my suggestions for easing into this administrator role or position is just that, where we add something. I'm just gonna spell it out. So what I was thinking about doing is potentially taking our executive assistant and adding more administrative duties, county administration duties to that position, and hiring then another clerk type of a position that would be backup or would do payroll and clerk's office and do those other things and minutes and stuff that the executive assistant is doing now. A lot of those lower level duties that our executive assistant is doing now would be put into this position. And we could ease into the position of an administrator through adding responsibilities to an existing position.
But we're still
I mean-
gonna have another employee to pay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, well,
But
but
the stuff he was saying would step down. Well,
it
can
is gonna add
you find
complexity to this
somebody?
position, so we would have to reassess it as far as compensation goes. And then we have another position that's probably gonna be at least a $37,000 to $40,000 a year plus benefits type of a position, or more even. I'm just
And
pulling out.
what are your thoughts on how hard it is to be somebody who has clerk, HR, payroll duties, therefore you're working for different people, helping different people. Your learning curve, at some point you'll get it, but still. How would they work for, and how would that work? And
Well, they'll work under the court. I
Okay.
think as far as structure goes, that position would work under the court.
okay,
But have responsibilities as a backup, not as a primary all the time, but as a backup. I would envision that the very first thing the person's gonna do is take on payroll. And they're gonna, once a month or twice a month, as we, potentially discussed, or that person is gonna, whatever they're doing, whatever duties they're doing, are gonna break away to do payroll once or twice a month, and that, until they get it down. And then 1 month, they work with the clerk's office to learn the roles and responsibilities and duties of the clerk's office. And then the next month, it's the treasurer. Next month, maybe any other HR duties that can be not shared, but learned. Until that person then is got that multiple layers of experience.
I'm sorry, but isn't that what Tammy Adelberger was hired for?
she doesn't do any payroll. As far
No,
as
I mean, I know what she doesn't do. I'm just saying, wasn't that position created for the exact position that you guys are talking about right now?
Well, she's a
When
deputy
Carrie
clerk,
left.
and the deputy clerk position has always been a deputy clerk position. I don't know when she was first hired, if there was somebody in the deputy clerk and then she was doing something else and moved into that.
Yes.
Is that what happened?
Well, she applied for the position. She worked in the assessor's office and a deputy clerk left. Do you remember some of the past deputy clerks we've had?
I just remembered that Miss Opie was in there.
She was our administrative assistant, but she also did work there.
Well,
In the past, there was someone who was totally deputy clerk. Didn't work for any
Was
other,
that like prior to 6 years ago?
yes,
So I was like, there hasn't been one.
yes, for
For a while.
many years, there was a clerk and a deputy clerk. That was the clerk's
yes,
office.
that is their makeup in that office, is the clerk, the elected clerk, and a deputy clerk is the makeup of that office. Carrie Opie was the administrative assistant for the county court. at the time of the budget deficit, they moved her over in and commingled that position jointly between the county court and the clerk's office, which she was funded out of both departments, but it was still all general fund, so I don't know why they decided to do that. But in the long run, it was all funds coming out of the general fund. I don't know why they decided to do
Yeah,
that.
I don't,
Because it's a work session, can we open it up? Cause I'd be curious to hear staff members' thoughts and
I'm
I'd be
fine with
curious to know if that's an insulated bag with ice cream sandwiches in it.
It's not.
It's the remains of a dinner or a lunch that I put off the staff.
A sub sandwich.
After 10 years, they completed scanning in, almost 100 years worth of files, so we're all electric now. It's a huge task for them. They got it done, so.
Are they out for hire? Because our justice
Lasagna.
court
I made
keeps
lasagna,
saying-
I gave it to all of them and then a piece to Heidi, because she gave me a scone yesterday. It's either a scone or 10 years of work.
for 10 years.
It was very good. It was good.
Thank you.
Got a little heat to it.
It's got Eastern Oregon heat for sure, but my father-in-law thought vanilla ice cream was spicy, so what it is.
Like
So-
Jerry.
So however that originally some years ago that was hired, we don't have that now. And the discussion is hiring a county administrator,
Mhm.
which is $100,000 a year, probably. How do we ease into that? Do we take existing staff and then create a subordinate position that helps do the other duties that would be relieved from what we have already? So, and it might be along the same lines as what she was hired for. I don't know. I have no idea. But either way, we're gonna have to hire a person, whether it's $100,000 a year administrator or a $40,000 a year administrative assistant of some kind. And increase, if the executive assistant takes on those duties, we have to reclassify that position and the compensation for that position. So it almost is gonna come out in the wash, maybe around $60,000 to $80,000, depending on, just a ballpark.
You're still gonna need an administrative assistant.
Yeah,
It makes no difference if you move
Well,
up somebody, you're gonna.
we still have
need
the
that.
executive assistant that is
That's gonna
doing
be-
pseudo administrator type
Executive
work.
assistant. They're
What's
gonna-
that?
They're gonna be your new person that's leading the staff. And I don't care which column. I'm concerned about facilitating, representing the county in intergovernmental relations. It's gonna get really sticky between the administrator and the policies. Policy people need to be out in the community representing your behaviors, your policies and that kind of thing, not a public paid employee.
I
Gonna
think
get confusion.
I think what was meant by that part was, for example, executing one of these intergovernmental agreements that we did for the building department where we signed something with them. I envision this position being all in-house. We would be out representing in the community. If that clears that up at all.
When you say representing the community or county, that doesn't mean in-house. That's got all sorts of implications for outhouse activities. But I don't think you want that.
Where are
I
you
don't
looking
think-
at?
The second page, fourth down. Public forums. for-
When delegated, represent when delegated.
I mean, that should be something that the elected officials are doing, not a hired gun.
I think though, wouldn't that be similar? Cause I think Holly, aren't you appointed or delegated by the commissioners to attend certain groups or activities on their behalf anyway?
I have taken notes of meetings.
Or is that,
Yeah,
okay,
no, she has no official role in any
Okay.
of that.
gotcha.
The only outside thing that she does currently is on the board for the biomass.
Okay, that might
And-
be what
and
I'm
that's-
thinking of.
Yeah, and it's kind of on behalf of the county, it's representing the county, it's just because we have 2 seats from the county, 2 seats from the school and one
Okay.
neutral position kind of. But I mean, we could have done anyway, we could have picked the assessor, we could have picked,
Right.
you know, whatever to do that.
I've seen this go both ways in the different organizations I've been involved with. The school board, the superintendent tends to be the forward-facing individual into the community and sort of articulate and just follows the policy determinations that come from the school board, but they tend to be in the background. And I've seen that also happen with a couple of city councils, such as Burns back in the early 2000s. It was the city manager tended to be the forward-facing individual. The other option is to just have truly a county administrator where they're given very clear articulation. You don't have any outward facing responsibilities. Your only job is to manage the internal operations of
Day-to-day.
the county, the day-to-day piece. And so you just, I mean, I understand where Mr. Paul's coming from in terms of his thinking. You just have to make a determination pretty quickly, what's that role going to look like? You add in the complication that this same internal person is also being responsive to a number of elected individuals. It's not just the board, but also all of the clerk and the treasurer and the rest. It becomes it's complicated.
And that falls into a well-defined, as you say, well-defined role and expectations. There's even an element there that could fall into succession to some small degree in signing IGAs or whatever, but our procurement policy would have to be amended to allow a county administrator to sign on behalf of, just like myself, with up to a threshold, $1 threshold that.
That I have heard of counties where that became a problem after they acquired an administrator, but that's because they weren't on top of it and they didn't define it clearly, and that is, you know, because the administrator was doing all kinds of stuff and obligating the county to all kinds of stuff, and the elected officials were like, what? When did that happen? You know, so
But
that,
those are all things that need to be hashed out.
right,
And decide
right.
what that full scope of role of that position is gonna be.
That seems like that'd be an easy fix if you kept it the way it is now, where the county governing body signs off on those things, but they can be brought to our attention by someone in that chief or administrator position.
I just wanted to bring it back to your comment, Commissioner Frank, about whether or not to open it up to county employees. I think you're going to find, regardless of which direction it is, whether, because it'll be adding a new position regardless. I think there's going to be a lot of unhappy employees where they've been blocked from step increases. We have a really bad track record for recognizing employees and supporting them and incentivizing them. And so I think it's worth it. I think you should, I think that would be something the town court should do.
To open it.
Yeah. Or at least poll, survey the employees to find out what they think.
As far as the creation of the administrator position, or the creation, even the other position that would, if we go the other way and an administrative position is opened up. I mean, obviously, that's gonna be bulletined and anybody would be able to apply for it.
Not so much for applying, but just, I think I don't see there being a huge support from current employees either way.
I think you're right. But I think it's something that we need. One of my biggest concerns and reasons for it is to have consistency so that every 6 years, we don't have different leadership in the county.
Right.
To have
That changes it every time.
some consistency and a guaranteed skill set, so that you're not rolling the dice every 6 years, I think would be important. I think we would benefit from having a full-time legislative, for lack of a better word, leader who can advocate for us with state and federal agencies. But it will be a hard sell to the employees, and I understand why. And those other departments mentioned too, that would benefit from having that other position. They have expressed for at least the last 9 months and longer than that they are short-staffed for some of their duties, so it would alleviate that.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
And I'm not saying I don't support or disagree, I just. People talk and share how they're feeling about things, and I think it would be worth it to include employees I do, just kind of on that note, I like the idea of adding job duties to the executive assistant. I think Holly's well respected and people get along with her. So I'll just throw that 2 cents in for what it's worth, but.
Well, and I propose that as a way of easing into, I mean, in essence, are we not taking the executive director or executive assistant and making that person the county administrator? I mean, cause that's kind of what we're doing. And I'm, full disclosure, I understand that, but it's a way of easing into that role. Without the full big price tag on it.
Don't you feel like that will elicit the same response from some employees that feel like they
Yes,
were
yeah,
I
overlooked?
think it will either way.
Yeah, and I agree.
That might be a softer approach though, but I think either way, it's, not everybody will be happy, I guess, we'll say.
But you need to look at the fairness across the board too, when you're doing things like that. Just putting it out there is,
Yeah.
I agree.
One of the things that is the situation is that the people sitting here are the ones that know most why we are having this discussion and why we are trying to figure this out. None of the rest of the employees, they might think they know, but they don't really know the level of work that we need to be doing. I mean, it's endless, really. We do as much as we can and we need to do more. And the administrative piece, I mean, we need to always be on top of it, but that can be done by a non-elected official if the job is appropriately laid out and free up even more ability to confront the things that Marnie, I mean, we've got a lot coming at us, guys. We always do, but we really do now.
I wish I had, as Commissioner Doral focuses a lot on the mental health and public health and those portions, public safety, and other disciplines that she focuses on. Commissioner Frank focuses a lot on our natural resource stuff and fair and agriculture and all that. I wish I had more time to focus on what we just got done talking about in economic development, where I had the time to pursue grants and pursue opportunities for the county. I mean, I attend events that are centered around economic development, but then I come back and don't really have the time to put it in action. So an administrator that would be able to take on a lot of those roles would help free me up to focus on those other areas or those needed topics. So
Well, I feel like I've been here for 13 years. I've been pulling a full-time job that I haven't been getting paid for as the data entry clerk in the DA's office, and my grand people are just like, they pay me to do victim services and that type of stuff. I write my own grants. I have over 400 and some victims at a time that I have been providing services for. Everything I do is time oriented. So I feel like this, I feel like a person that's in a swimming pool. I can see the blue sky, but I can never get there because we are piled continually in our office and short-staffed up there. And so we feel the same way about how do you get the time to do these extra things? Like, it's just even doing the stuff that's required in order, I mean, you kind of just have to drop one thing and just do another thing and stuff. And so we're very familiar with short staffing and those types of things. We don't have a control over how much crime comes through our county. It just comes at us, and we have 5 agencies plus other counties wanted us to take conflict cases and everything else. And we, I guess, up in our office and stuff, just feel like we're already short-staffed and have been for over a year. Our DA is drowning right now. Because he's trying to handle the whole caseload. He's not as good at time management as I am. I've been doing it for 13 years. And so he's learning the hard way of doing that and stuff, but we feel like we've had some shifting in our office of duties and those types of things, but when budget time comes and things like that, or if there's hitches in budgets or whatever, I'm just gonna be honest with you, I was really, really disappointed when I had a little hiccup with the VOCA grant where they blocked our money for, because we're a sanctuary state in Oregon. They were not gonna give us the funding, and so I had to come downstairs and I had to go in and say, hey, I just wanna let you know way ahead of time that I am gonna cut everything I can to be able to perform my job duties and stuff, but I might be, and I think I was within $21,000 short of being able to run that program at best for the rest of the year. And I was met with, oh, I'm so sorry. We don't have a dime for you. I am sorry, Renee. And that was just a tide over until the grant thing could straighten out, because we didn't know legislatively how long that was gonna take. But do you know what a slap in the face that was for me after 13 years of coming here and being on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week of dealing with mentally ill people every day on my job, servicing over 400 and some victims at a time and keeping up with that, doing data entry and stuff, for me to come to my county that I have been serving religiously and just have them say, roadblock me, sorry about your bad day, you're just gonna have to maybe go part-time, sorry. And then to have you guys sitting there saying, oh, we need our time freed up, it's kind of insulting, I'm sorry. And I don't mean to get emotional on you, but I am sorry. Like, we have been buried for years out there. And I don't ever ask the Department of Justice, tell me you need to hire somebody and stuff, but it's a whole process to create a position. We don't even have room up there to do it. But, and then so like you guys are saying, oh, we'll create another position and we'll find them funding. It's kind of very insulting. And I'm just gonna say it, and it was very insulting. We don't have a lot of information about what you do, but you don't have a lot of information about what we do day to day either, and nobody ever goes to get that information, so.
I appreciate your candor.
Thank you, sorry, I'm kind of black and white.
That's all
It's
right.
been that way.
But I have thought about, it is hard to justify when we don't have any money, which we don't, creating another position and paying for it. Which is why I tried to think creatively and was gonna ask, I need to know who can tell me if it is a realistic expectation to say in a job description that they will procure and administer their salary or more worth of grant money a year. I don't know if that's realistic, but nonetheless, my main concern with this, besides taking things off anyone's plates, because everybody's busy, everyone fills their whole 24 hours in their day, is that consistency. I don't like the thought, and I haven't liked the thought for a decade, that every time we elect a new leader, we don't know what skills they'll have. And if in 3 years we elect a judge, or in 12 years we elect a judge, and they don't have the skills to put together a budget, that's concerning to me. I would prefer to hire that position and know that we have those skills. And to me, that's the main reason for even bringing a proposal forward. I think it would probably be wise to, before pursuing much further, to at least finish our comp study, because we have a lot of people not being paid what they should be paid. I think that needs to be addressed. But
that's not, in that, the comp study will align positions in the appropriate grades. But it's not necessarily going to equate to pay increases, because we still come down to the ability. There's only a certain number of dollars in that pot and what we have to pay. So it's not necessarily gonna equate to pay increases when it's done. It'll be a classification of the positions to make sure that they're in the right classification that they're in. I mean, the next phase of this study is actually the pay comparison. The first part was the internal classification of like positions and responsibilities. And the next portion of it is compensation comparison to other counties and whatnot. But if you're comparing a position X to position X in Marion County, the pay is gonna be different. If you're, even in some cases, if you're comparing position X to position X in Grant County, the pay is gonna be different. They have different revenue sources and are able to pay more than what, so you can't just take dollars out of the sky to make it comparable or competitive. I mean, that's where it comes back again, kind of with the economic development topic discussion, is finding development for Harney County that brings in more property taxes and more revenue. It's basically, it's an exercise of finding revenue, period. How do we do that? How do we find revenue to be able to pay more and fund programs? Do we go into the property business? Do we go into, I mean, we've gone into the healthcare business over public health in order for that to fund public health, and it's no longer being budgeted out of general fund. But what do we go into and what do we do to generate revenue to fund our county?
Well, getting back to the administrator thing a little bit, I appreciate those comments, Judge. And I hear you, Renee. I'm glad you spoke up passionately here. Couple years ago, the budget committee, at the second to last meeting, it was brought up by a member and supported by one other member. Well, we need to go ahead and create an administrator job and put it in the budget. And I remember thinking, you don't just do that second to last meeting, and what are we talking about here? So this conversation has been, but is really gonna have to go on before we do anything. Because of this, there's no wiggle room, really. So the thing is, where would we pay for it? And is that the highest priority thing to pay for compared to all the other things? So I would like the idea of it, but, is it even palatable to make it happen at this time? I don't know.
I mean, I appreciate you guys with the elected thing and somebody new is coming in. I get that. You're elected officials. I also get the fact that if the public decides to elect somebody else, I feel like it is no different than any other position, that you should graciously take that new person and train them before they come in and say, this is where we're at and this is what we've been doing. And then, so they at least aren't just coming in here blind and not understanding how the budget works and and hopefully they would come in prior to taking over that elected position and want to learn and stuff. But I think it would be no different than in my job or Heidi's job or anybody else's job, your position with the budget board, that you would take the new person because you care about your county and you want it to run smoothly, whether you're in an elected position or a higher position or not, that you would care enough about what you've done and have enough respect for your county to take those new people in and show them the ropes at least, so they're not just running around blind.
Well, one of the things that did change on the court when we had our budget crisis was the realization that one person, the county judge, who is also the budget officer, one person has been doing all this stuff, and the other two commissioners, while, part of the budget board and all that, did not know nearly enough to be a check on, not because they're doing anything wrong necessarily, but on another person. Because if they're getting it wrong by accident, beginning fund balance wrong, the other two hadn't been as involved, because it's kind of hard to be involved to that level when people are punching it in every day and you're not. But we have changed it to where we're a lot more involved, because again, you don't want a single point of failure, even if there's no intent to fail. And so it was sort of a culture shift, just amongst the county court. Okay, all of us are responsible for the budget, so all of us need to have enough information and oversight and transparency amongst each other to do that. And we have worked on that, and it has improved, but anyway, but I hear what you're saying. We're just,
Can
having
you
the-
guys take some of the administrative duties or some of these duties that you're saying that this person can do, spread it out a little more, instead of just saying that all of this is the county judge. You guys are equally, just like you just said, you're equally responsible. You're signing your name on the paper saying that the county's doing this and stuff. And so, like you said, you should have knowledge of whatever that process is for whatever you're doing before you put your, I wouldn't sign it if I didn't know what was going on or didn't understand that
Well,
process.
we do think about it, you know, some counties, they have their different commissioners. You know, you're in charge of these 3 departments, and I think that's horrible, because you will get different departments being treated very differently because you have different individuals that are overseeing them. I understand, then you can get that commissioner can really get to know those departments and how it functions, but it creates great inequalities of oversight, management, and partnership with the departments when you do that. So that we have a lot of these discussions all the time. How can we, what's the best way to do it well for Harney County?
And you guys are all elected for the best benefit of our county,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
So if you're gonna do an administrator that's going to take over duties from you, wouldn't that equal you guys out instead of the community electing a judge and 2 commissioners, basically electing 3 commissioners?
Well, so our form of government being a county court, there's a judge and 2 commissioners. If we change that to a board of commissioners, then we're all commissioners with a chair, one position being a chair. Some other counties that have boards of commissioners that way rotate the chair every year or 2. I'm not a real big fan of that because I don't think it provides the consistency and continuity in that form of government, or doing it that way. I would say that even if we went to a board of commissioners, we still have an elected chair that is a full-time position. And that goes back to, if we had an administrator, do we all go to halftime, or not necessarily halftime, but we're not here 40 hours a week? Do we then turn that unelected person loose to be the decision maker because there's not somebody here full-time out of one of us that's here full-time throughout the week to make those decisions? So there's a lot of different things to think about and consider there on that aspect. But as far as us being a county court, because by statute have probate authority, which, I'll be honest with Judge Braccio here, if those cases get sticky or have dynamics to them that is beyond my capability, we forwarded them up to circuit court. And if we went to a board of commissioners, that would automatically be transferred to circuit court because we wouldn't have that authority any longer. The county court and the county judge wouldn't have that authority anymore. As far as, I don't think there's anything that says that the county judge has to be that full-time position. I mean, you could have a county judge that's paid at the same rate, but if you have somebody that's gonna be here 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, does that position then not classify at a higher responsibility and, paid more? And that's why it is the way it is right now. It's paid more than the commissioners are. But I understand what you're saying, but to just cut it back and say everybody's the same in the form of government that we have is a little bit different. I mean, it's not
If
just.
we were to do that, we would definitely need an administrator, in my opinion.
Yeah,
At that point.
And it actually, I apologize, I've been through this before, up in the Dalles, when I lived up in Wasco County, they transitioned from a county court to a county commission, and exactly the things that you're saying happened, right? An administrator was placed into a position, that person ended up having a lot more authority over day-to-day operations. Became sort of like the superintendent, example, the forward-facing person for the county. And, for what it is, that is what it is. And it also requires, of course, if you're gonna move to a home rule county and change the structure of government, it would open up all the positions that are elected, with the exception of the clerk and the sheriff, for review as to whether they will continue to be elected positions. The probate authority would be lost by the county, which I appreciate the county doing that work for the court, where I'm a half-time circuit court judge for 2 counties. However, then that would also ultimately require a vote of the people to agree to change to that. So it's not something that can be done overnight. It's not like we decide today we're gonna do that, take a vote of the people of Harney County, and you're looking at least 2 years out before you'd be able to achieve that.
the very first thing that has to happen is by statute, probate authority is vested in 5 county courts, Harney County being one of those 5 county courts, Mount Hero, Grant, Harney. Whatever,
You want the other two?
what's that?
You want the other two?
Yeah,
Okay. Wheeler and Gillum and Sherman, actually.
well, there's, but in the statute, I think there's just 5 named, isn't there?
I'd have to go back.
I don't know, I have to, anyway, so 5 or 6, it specifically gives that probate authority to that county court, to those county courts, and we have to get out from underneath that statute before we could do anything. There has to be legislative change to that statute to remove or put a remedy in there that would allow those governments to choose how they wanna do it. Right now, we're locked in, we can't.
We are not allowed to change our form of government and put it to the voters until this legislative fix happens.
I have no interest in changing our form of government, and I think the form of government that we have makes sense. And there are a lot of reasons that I have for not supporting a board of commissioners about this now.
That's to say, what was your hard stop?
Oh,
15.
okay.
I think we're just in general conversation, I think, right now. I think we have more conversation to do with the administrator. I've said it from the get-go that I am not opposed to an administrator, that we just can't afford it. We have to find a way to afford it. But I get where the staff is coming from, that if we can, through whatever means, find the dollars to support an administrator, then what message does that send to the rest of our staff that we haven't been able to give step increases or higher cost of living increases, or create positions in offices that need the boots on the ground doing the work? I get all that, and that's exactly why I've said I'm not opposed to an administrator. I just don't know how we're gonna fund it.
I believe that's why it hasn't happened to this day, at least if you just count the last 8 years or so, for discussions and thoughts.
And my suggestion, if we really as a body are deciding to go that route, that an easier way into it is to take existing staff. We're still gonna have to create one position, but take existing staff and ease into that process. It has a less of a hit, but you still send the same message. You still send the same message that we've created another position for our purposes, but what about the rest of the departments out there? I get it, I understand it, I'm sensitive to it. And I've said it for the last year and a half that I'm not opposed to this. It's just, how do we make it happen, if we're gonna make it happen without it being to the detriment or the sacrifice of other departments? Because that's what it boils down to at this point. Even for the DA's office needing another staff member, at this point right now, unless we had some kind of creative funding or got some funding from the state for DA's functions, we basically have to delete another position somewhere else and realign it to the DA's office. That's the only way we could do it. And to be honest, that's about the only way we could do another administrative or clerical type position as well, with what we have funding for right now. 3% a year on our property taxes is not enough, and I think they're really seriously looking at Measure 5 and Measure 50 and loosening up those purse strings a little bit so that counties, I don't want to pay any more in property taxes. I really don't in my own home. But to fund our county and fund our operations, we got to have more revenue, and that's one of the only other ways that we're going to get more revenue. Any last burning thoughts that anybody has? You have a 3:15 hard stop.
Well, I mean, it's a softer stop than I may have initially.
Gosh.
If I run out of here at 3:18, I'll be fine.
I don't think we're gonna solve anything in the next 15 or 18 minutes or whatever, but I just wanna.
I just had a question. I know this wasn't on the agenda, but you had commented on it earlier, regarding the comp study. What is the timeline on that?
It's a little fluid. Right now, some of the positions came back rated lower, significantly lower. And in a conversation with the person who's doing that work for us, my intent was that kind of more towards the end, before we finalize things, that we would go back and look at those positions and say, why was it rated at this? That individual excuse me, that individual actually said now would be the best time to do that. So we do need to go back and look at what the classifications that have come out right now in the first phase. And then go back and relook at them and make sure that the job descriptions reflect what the positions are doing. Not the people, not the person, but the position. What the expectation is that if that person was gone, the person filling that position is gone today, who do you want, what skills do you want in it tomorrow? So we need to, probably now is the time we need to go back and start looking at that. There's not a whole bunch of them. There might be a half a dozen or so that we really need to look at and make sure that they're accurate. Next phase, as I mentioned, was the payroll compensation comparison. We just were talking at the county administrators meeting and at the District 2 meeting about all the counties helping each other out and putting our pay scales in. That would be a big help for these people doing this studies because all the data would be right there for the person doing that study. So I'm hoping maybe after AOC conference or something and talking with the administrators that we can agree to all contribute that information with what we're currently doing. And then our person we have hired for this would be able to do that part of it really quick. I would love to have it done first part of the year, but so that we could any changes that we are gonna have to make, we'd be able to do it in this budget cycle. I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was curious about that.
Yeah, no, I want it wrapped up and done too. So there was one done in 1998, which is the only one I could find any documentation in, and I was actually, when we were talking with the person doing this study last Friday, I think it was, there was one done in 2006 too. I know there were some partial ones done in between those dates where they just looked at a department or a position or two. But I don't have any documentation of the one in 2006, and she forwarded it to me. So it was my assumption that it hadn't been done completely since 98.
Did you say a 2006 one does have documentation now?
Yes, she sent it to me. So I wanna kind of compare it against. But still, you have 98 to 2006 is 8 years.
And we're almost at 2026, so it's a long time.
Yeah, in between, and I don't know if it's a written hard law, rule, regulation, statute, whatever, but they're supposed to be done about every 5 years. So we were way overdue for ours. But it helps keep positions, and positions change, roles and responsibilities change, and if you don't reclassify those positions to where they're supposed to be, they become stagnant.
And that would be some other work an administrator would be working on, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Any other questions from y'all out there for us? Any final thoughts?
No, sir. If anybody has more input on who knows enough about grants to tell me if that's realistic expectation, let me know, because I don't know a whole lot about them.
Just on the surface, I think the hard part will be that grants are not guaranteed ever. And so you might run into an issue where, 1 year, maybe the person obtains a lot of grants, and then the next time they go, nope, you get none because you've had some before. So just maybe, I don't know, maybe not make it such a black and white, but that they will apply for, that they will, attempt to.
I think it would be an unreasonable expectation to say that you will apply for and obtain grants that will help fund your position. Because even grant cycles from administration to administration are up and down. I mean, there was all kinds of money out there 4 years or 2 or 3 years ago. Now there's not so much money out there. An expectation, a more reasonable expectation is that as part of the job description, you will research and apply for grants as available, but to expect them to be obtained is an unreasonable expectation.
That's one that Renee has been doing for 13 years, just so you know.
For her specific program.
Yep.
But
I
we're talking,
was thinking more countywide, because if they can bring in $100,000 worth of grants, regardless of what department it is, that offsets the cost of their position, is what I envision.
The de minimis administrative cost that you can take off of, especially if they're federal grants, is 15%. So if you got $100,000 grant, you can take $15,000 of it for administration.
And I think state might be even less.
I wanna say the state, they might still be around 10%. Or
I
less.
think one of mine was like 3 to 5.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was pretty low.
But one thing you have to remember about that, and the reality of that world is you may have in your application says you can take that much. However, that administrative fee is based on A, the percentage, like you said, whether it's a state or federal grant, B, the amount of grant, the funding that the grant provides. What duties are you actually having to pay out of that grant? And there may not be 15% or 5% in your budget to be able to provide that big of an amount, especially if it's a smaller grant. Then when you go to expend the grant, you can't just say, okay, we get 10% of $250,000. That's $25,000. Okay. You can't do that. You can only get that $25,000 if you expend that whole $250,000. If you expend less and you're gonna have a carryover balance, you cannot get more than 10%, 5%, or 15% of what you've actually expended in the grant. So there you have it. That's how it works.
Most grants that we would probably be seeking are project specific. Yeah, project specific, so if we don't have a project ready to spend the money on and use all the money. Don't see that happening unless you're just dealing with general funds.
Hate to skin out early, but I really
It's all right.
have to.
All right, thank you, everybody. The discussion was great. I appreciate everybody's time and, we shall continue.
What do you mean, a circuit court
Yes.
session? Are we adjourning?
So with that, everybody's leaving, so I guess we are adjourned.
So, is that just dirt or is that?
Probably dirt off of his boots.
Okay.
I always used to be just in on the board.
Just wanna make sure that's all it was.
So. I'm gonna-
Well.
Whatever it was.